Have you ever wondered what it would be like to play God? Some questions should stay unanswered. We selected 7 individuals for the study. My colleagues found it important to have a radical mixture of gender and sexual orientation. Discrete cameras were set up throughout the participants' home and place of business. We instructed the subjects to proceed with their daily activities normally, as if nothing had changed. We then told our people a white lie. We told them that a team of scientists would be working to alter their lives. Allegedly, this group analyzed the recordings and applied subtle changes to the subjects' real-time routines. Each modification would be designed to improve personal productivity and overall contentment. We told subjects that they should not notice any differences whatsoever. It could be as simple as a passerby saying hi. We also forbid all contact with us during this time. The reality was that we did nothing. We just watched. In the interest of avoiding the ire of recent legal proceedings, I will avoid using last names. I worked with a respected sociologist named Thomas, or Tommy, for short. Tom's prestige in the industry secured our funding in the first place. I considered myself the intern. My job entailed ordering pizza, bringing coffee, and answering phones. Sometimes Thomas allowed me to watch the cameras while he slept or left the building. Not a bad gig for a 23-year-old kid with a sociology degree. That changed soon after it started. My hatred for my job started when our first subject, Michael, began to behave erratically. Biography listed him as Subject 001. A straight white male, age 28, he stood at 6 feet 3 inches. He weighed 190 pounds. He had dark brown hair with the blemish on the upper right corner of his eyebrow. Mike did not have a girlfriend at the time. Thankfully, Tom considered that factor. It did not take long for things to go haywire. On the second day of record keeping, I caught Mike talking to himself in the middle of the night. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Are you sure I don't want to do it? The noise nearly caused me to fall off my chair. The rest of the day had been silent. I checked the cameras twice, but found no one else there. Thomas had left the building on another one of his errands. I texted him an alert. Just as Michael jumped out of bed on the infrared and walked to his door, camera 3 was 001 is losing his marbles. Tommy walked into our makeshift laboratory a couple of minutes later. He wore a look of guarded excitement and an undersized white coat that barely covered his overstuffed belly. Crumbs on his jacket suggested that snacking had caused him to slack off the next door yet again. Tom looked fascinated when he saw the screen. He watched the monitor over my shoulder like a parrot. Michael banged his head against the wall. My colleague sounded downright giddy when he exclaimed, "Oh, it's happening. Record this kid." I did not know what it meant, but I followed orders. After about 23 headbangs, Michael stopped moving. We waited and watched for 10 minutes. We checked his vitals. Somehow, Michael was not injured. He only fell asleep standing up. It is an eerie feeling to watch a man on the verge of losing his mind. The curtains in his apartment fluttered nervously in the wind every few hours. Michael roused himself from sleep and checked the window nervously, then returned to his perch by the bedroom door. He repeated this trend a few times throughout the night. He didn't get back in bed all evening. The next day, Michael got a promotion. We had nothing to do with it. We watched the whole thing from a hidden cubicle camera. Michael's boss sounded truly grateful. She considered Michael's job performance to be worthy of recognition. To boot, the firm had been particularly successful that quarter. That meant a big bonus. The shit-eating grin on Michael's face told us that he considered the experiment to be responsible. Our subject got very drunk that night. We did not capture the bar in our video feed. I did, however, catch his walk of shame home sometime around 2 in the morning. I adjusted the audio and found the guy talking to himself once again. I don't want to. I don't want to. Are you sure? I don't want to. Michael walked into the apartment and flicked the light switch. Right up, the room remained quiet and empty. He repeated his favorite little phrase over and over again. He futzed around in the living room in an apparent panic. I don't want to. I don't want to. Are you sure I don't want to do it? I don't want to do it. Are you sure I don't want? Do it. It annoyed me, to be honest. I started to doubt my colleague. Unstable subjects tend to skew results. I had not considered the more dire consequences at the time. Who was he talking to? I asked. Tom didn't answer. Michael walked toward the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water from the fridge. His movement seemed extremely erratic. The overall behavior reminded me of an animal with rabies, especially the way one leg dragged behind the other suddenly, as if hearing something. Michael stopped and stared out of the kitchen window. The water spilled all over the floor. Michael stayed in that position for 5 minutes, then he offered one last line in the direction of the kitchen door. "Are you sure?" Then he sprinted outside without another word. "Switch the camera 4, Tommy barked over my shoulder. I did as I was told. I swear that's it. The memory of this still keeps me up at night. Michael's drunken shape came back into focus on the green grass of the apartment complex. The receiver taped to his chest captured rapid breaths as his haphazard footsteps traced the path that led on only one direction. Headlights and horns blasted only 50 feet away on the freeway. "Tom, this is a problem. This is a big fucking problem." I must have repeated that phrase at least 1,000 times, but my pleas were ignored by my wide-eyed companion. I grabbed the office phone and quickly tried to find an emergency contact. All the while Michael teetered in between traffic, carelessly, like a missing toddler. "There's nothing we can do," Tom muttered. "What do you want me to say?" Michael's body exploded the moment it met the tractor trailer. He died that day. Our benefactor compensated the family handsomely. Litigation was temporarily avoided. The God experiment continued with the remaining subjects uninterrupted for 5 weeks. The God experiment's second trial claimed a 29-year-old woman. Her name was Caroline. According to the bile, the subject stood at 5 feet 3 inches. She weighed 135 pounds. Caroline had dirty blonde hair that met mildly hazel eyes with astigmatism affecting both lenses. Survey results indicated a surprising lack of romantic partners in the picture. Regardless, she was a female who pursued men exclusively. That fact checked Tommy's second box. So enter subject 002. Caroline lived alone in a small apartment close to home. She preferred it that way. The short distance made it easy to check on her mother, Jacqueline, twice a day. Jacqueline suffered from stage 2 breast cancer, and the debilitating results of chemotherapy just started to take effect around the time of our study. She never complained. Some had it worse. Her dad died from the same disease years back. Nobody wanted that. Her brother was working now, and Caroline considered that a good thing. No one knew how long Sean could stay employed. Minimum wage positions tended to be seasonal. She told friends on the phone that the new job seemed lucrative but scary. What if something could happen to him? If she lost either one, she might just lose her mind. And so late at night, Caroline prayed. I liked to listen to the audio while Tommy snored in the hallway. She asked God for the same thing we all do. A game-changing cure for her mom. Maybe. Started to look thinner every day. Perhaps her brother could land a manager position at that new store in town. He has so much potential, she would say. Her voice rose slightly past a whisper every time she repeated that line. Give him the strength to apply himself. This time, Caroline also asked God if it would be time to meet a man with the weight. That last one seemed a lot less important than the rest, though. It stayed noted as such in all prayers. She repeated the routine every single night. Nobody ever answered. That changed in the second week of our study. Jacqueline had an important doctor's appointment in the morning. Her daughter stayed up late in the night with worry. She said 17 prayers, 6 Hail Marys, 6 Our Fathers, and 5 personalized messages to the big man himself. Somehow, the kid got something right. Excitement overwhelmed the car's audio. The moment the two of them got inside, Jacqueline spoke with an apprehensive tone at first. Wait, I can't hear that, doctor, he mumbles when he talks. The chemo actually worked. The backdrop of the corporate parking lot suddenly painted a beautiful scene. Mother and daughter embraced for several long moments. Static from their windbreakers corrupted the microphones for a moment. They both wiped tears from their eyes as they sat back in their seats. The chemo actually worked. Caroline coughed a couple of times to clear her voice. Doctor said, you need some follow-up, scans, some new medicine. But no more treatments. She paused and looked at her mother with admiration. You're in remission, young lady. I paused the video. The moment caused me to tear up as well. The poor battle-worn woman smiled brightly underneath her wig. She looked young again. I guess the recognition of salvation took off 10 years. It was beautiful to see something good happen. Finally, in a string of so much bad, Tommy appeared over my shoulder. Screenshot that, and I did as I was told. We resumed the video a second later. Call your brother. He worries. Caroline's mother usually wore a gruff and unfriendly expression, but today, nothing could contain the excited sparkle in those weary eyes. Let's get a drink. Oh, he's on speakerphone. He called us. Caroline giggled. Sean, can you hear us? The confident young man crackled through the secondary audio. Well, guess who just became a full-timer? Both of Caroline's wishes came true that same day, and so the family celebrated well into the night. They chose a restaurant on the outskirts of town. We did not have this location on our camera feed. I hope they had a good time. Once again, our cameras caught a drunk subject stumbling home after hours. I was alone at the time when I enhanced the audio. Her nervous voice caused my blood to run cold. Are they okay? Okay? Are they okay? Okay? Are they okay? 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 Caroline mumbled the words loop like a depressing song. Are they okay? Okay? Are they okay? Okay? Are they okay? Eh? Tommy promised his wife a real dinner for the first night. And who knows how long I promised to cover. I called and texted him about 1,000 times. Subject 002. Same symptoms. We can't let this fucking happen again. Answer the fucking phone, Tommy. I did not receive a response. Caroline teetered around her family room in confused, stuttered steps. She repeated her new phrase to the empty room a few more times. The whole thing seemed bizarre. Too bizarre for just a crazy night of drinking. I did not think drugs could have been involved, at least not voluntarily. The girl didn't even keep alcohol in the house. After 5 minutes, and Caroline walked to the door and stepped into the rain. The temperature read 43 degrees Fahrenheit. She did not have shoes, a sweater, or a hat. I swapped through views as quickly as possible in order to catch up after a few moments. The second camera found our subject in her backyard. A dusty cornfield sat on the corner of the rural property, and Caroline walked toward it slowly. She did not look worried or appeared to be in a rush. The mic caught cool, calm, and collected breaths through the rain. In fact, for the second week of our study, things seemed to be heading in the right direction. A late-night conversation in the bedroom with Samantha broached the topic of marriage. His little sister Sarah texted often and claimed that she felt fine. The course of his career continued to trend upwards, and bonus season claimed another happy participant. However, we began to notice similar symptoms the Tuesday after subject 002 went missing. Courtney's mother called that morning. The conversation started pleasant enough. She talked about herself, mostly the gossip at the library, favorite television shows, the usual. However, the topic eventually led to where it always does, her father's drinking problem. Dad must have heard the last part when he walked by. He offered one soul-crushing bit of advice into the receiver while Mom tried to escape the room. Tell my little girl. I say hello. Tom and I were both in the office at the time. The results of that single sentence were almost too horrible to bear. Courtney was in his car and approaching a bridge. The phone line disconnected, but he still screamed into it anyway. Mom, Dad, that's it. You have nothing else to fucking say to me. Why'd you even fucking call me? Why did fucking do this to me? The line beeped without sympathy. Something inside the poor man's eyes looked dead inside. It did not require 720p video inside the dashcam to properly characterize the look of defeat and utter anguish. I wanted to help him, but as always, there was no time. Plus, the rules of the God experiment forbade interaction. Tommy looked ready to make an exception. When Courtney pulled over and got out of the car, we switched cameras. Our participant stood on the narrow sidewalk and stared into the distance for a couple of minutes. Then he walked forward. The fog had started to pour in at that altitude. Rain had drifted in and out of the area all evening. Quietly, Courtney began to whisper one line on loop, just like all the others. I am your missing string. 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 Tommy appeared really worried at that moment. He grabbed his cell phone and furiously thumbed a text to a number I did not recognize. Then he reached over and paused my video and instead pointed to an opposite monitor. Camera 4 showed the inside of the car. What the fuck is that? He asked. It was impossible to see any features. But one fact seemed clear. Black shape sat very still in the back seat at about medium height. After a few moments, the door opened beside it and something exited in the opposite direction. We frantically adjusted the cameras to get a view, but there was no one else in sight. I resumed the video and checked on Courtney. He dangled carelessly off a support beam as I repeated my favorite slew of curses. Cold, hard ground several 100 feet below did not seem to be worrying to anybody but Tom and me. Where do all missing strings go? Courtney asked our audio feed. Then first time in the entire experiment, she seemed at peace. Blood pressure and vitals lowered to healthier levels. Her pulse did not indicate any issues. Caroline reached the edge of the cornfield before long. She turned and looked one last time toward the house and smiled. Part of me still feels like she smiled at the camera without warning. A blunt object struck her head from behind. I sat dumbfounded and helpless as a blurry shape dragged our subject away. The audio caught one last line before the mic fell into the maze. Are they okay? Hey. Subject 002 is still missing to this day. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to watch 7 lives fall apart on camera? Picture yourself on a train ride over a mountain covered in ice, and you hear the avalanche. A monotone rumble of shifting rocks and billowing snow overloads the cold air. That noise can only mean one thing, right? You're sure death is coming, but no one in the carnage screams, no one is crying, and instead, calm and quiet right up until the end. Subject 003 was a transgender male named Courtney. The participant stood 5 feet 6 inches. He weighed 150 pounds in the photograph, dark, unblemished skin, matte stylish black hair, shaved short on one side. Courtney was in a relationship with a female, but the happy couple had not moved in together. I considered can replacement to be ideal inside the cramped studio apartment. From an early age, Courtney exhibited clear signs that birth did not match the right body. Early onset identity crisis led to complexities, including depression and anxiety that went untreated throughout the teenage years. The madness ended when medical professionals took corrective measures to implement a lifelong dream. He worked in a high-paying job in the healthcare industry. Meehan held a padded HSA to boot. He paid for the whole procedure himself. Even still, Courtney's parents ceased all communication. That fact haunted him. Courtney never considered himself religious. Survey results indicated that with a few major concepts, he believed in a God. He believed in judgment and punishment and some sort of peace in the end for us all. Like everybody, Courtney had his own issues with the big man or big lady. On the topic of omnipotence, he wrote, "If there is a puppet master, I am his missing string." I found that sort of dark. But he still prayed for some things. The messages delivered by his bedside in the dark of night were to no one in particular. Each offering began with something like, "I don't know if anyone is listening, but because it felt safer that way, easier not to damn yourself with one if you got a chance with another." He prayed for his family to talk to him again. He prayed for acceptance. He prayed for his little sister's health and another promotion and better medication, less makeup. But most of all, he asked for something most may be able to understand. He prayed for enough money to make his girlfriend a wife and start a life. In the slipped off his shirt, he unattached the microphone. He finished one final sachet around the pole. Then, subject 003 took a dramatic swan dive into the below. I still wonder about his question. I don't think anybody really knows Michelle was a transgender female who never quite adjusted to the cameras in her home. That fact alone made her much smarter than the rest. It was an unmistakable and itchy feeling to be watched. Some people recognize it better than others. The sensation can creep through your guts like a virus. Makes all those little hairs on your neck stand on end. Survival instincts implore human beings to seek shelter in these situations. It is always best to avoid the eyes of the hunter. But if there is no way to be sure of safety, what if the lion has eyes in every corner of the jungle? Subject 004 survey indicated a hermit-like behavior. She had few family and friends. Her employer was an online blog that allowed employees to work from home. The topics of conversation for this site were nothing short of the usual dog shit you see in National Enquirer and similar publications. Popular headlines included women, Mary's alien Bigfoot kept lumberjack as a love slave, and more of the usual attention-seeking crap. The more absurd, better. Michelle had been with the company for nearly 10 years. Her articles on conspiracy theories built a reputation that stretched across the country. Nevertheless, the layoff at corporate headquarters claimed her job in the second week of our study. As with past participants, our video caught all the gory details. Our subject cried in bed for days. She did not leave her apartment for a week. Doctor appointments stayed canceled. Groceries were delivered to the house, and the few friends remaining offered nothing outside of a few half-hearted text messages. So it goes. Michelle pursued the employment market relentlessly. Personally, I thought this indicated a willingness to take life more seriously. The resume compiled online looked impressive to my untrained eyes. She called and begged several other companies that claimed to be hiring. She filled out 1 million applications online. But I suppose the job market is tough for the type of person who once wrote that her landlord is a lizard. Most newspapers insisted on more serious experience. Few fellow blog sites openly laughed during interviews on the phone. The windfalls of hope and repeated disappointment became tough to watch. All these factors added up left Michelle at home all day alone. She turned to alcohol somewhere around the 3rd week. Tommy blamed the strange behavior that followed on her excessive drinking. I remained unconvinced the warning signs that I had come to identify seemed to be repeating themselves in subject 0041. Hungover morning, Michelle moved a chair to a blind spot in the kitchen. She sat there for 4 hours. The entire apartment stayed quiet during this time. When Michelle emerged, she seemed suspicious of everything from the cat to her own shadow. She searched the apartment endlessly for something, and that made us worry during setup. Tom etched one of our cameras into the wood of her nightstand. Sure enough, she found it after tearing apart the whole room. She talked to us openly from that point on. That revelation certainly affected our test results. But as always, our responsibility stayed the same. Interference and correction did not present itself as an option. We were only observers. The camera became a prop of Michelle's bout of self-destruction. She carried that and a bottle of Jack Daniels everywhere she talked to, both as if live streaming. Most of the messages were incoherent and similar to the nonsense she used to peddle for a living. Reporting live from the kitchen. Water has turned to a mysterious brown color. Back to you, Doc. Reporting from the bedroom. Something is scratching underneath my floor. Can you guys hear that? Reporting from the den? Someone is outside my door? Is that one of you? Nothing I saw or heard on screen confirmed her theories. However, my concerns started to get more serious when Michelle refused to sleep 2 days without rest, turned to 3 and 4 and 5. Her behavior became manic. On several occasions, I caught her staring at the walls for hours at a time. Soon enough, Michelle found the remaining cameras she took to hiding in blind spots that made it impossible for me to see her after that. Frequency and length of the live streams radically decreased. I hope that wherever she went, Michelle finally found some sleep. The apartment was always very quiet. During that time, there were no other voices inside. One morning, many days later, someone knocked at the apartment door. Michelle had not been outside in 2 weeks. Tom snored so loud in the lab that I had almost missed it. The knock started out quiet and unassuming. After a few unanswered raps, it grew more aggressive until it soon became an absolute pounding that stirred my colleague from his sleep and caused Michelle to sprint into my line of sight in a panic. Do you guys hear it now? We did. What do I do? I had no idea. Tom pulled out his phone again. He had a block on the device that obscured my vision from the side. I asked him angrily about the text messages, and he started to answer me, just as subject 004 walked over to the door. Shit. She cannot answer that door. He might. Instead, Michelle could not hear us. She looked through the peephole neurotically. Then she shrugged her shoulders and caught a quick nervous breath and unlocked the chain. Why don't we have visibility in the hallway? I asked, fearing the answer. Came a second later, a gunfire erupted in our headphones. A bullet caught subject 004 in the head. I knew immediately in the arm Michelle was dead. Should not even have time to scream. Tom pulled the plug from every computer monitor and power grid in the lab. Video and audio disappeared in kind. He fired off a few more rapid-fire text messages. In a few short moments, the God experiment fell completely offline. His next words removed any doubt in my mind. We have to help. There are many subjects we're running out of time. God found me in the middle of a hurricane. We were absolutely flying down an ill-advised stretch of I-95. Storm warnings vibrated the phones in our pockets like a pair of dildos. That evening, the road stayed slick with white waves of spitting rain and bits of black ice that stuck to the asphalt like butter. I clung to the steering wheel and kept my eyes on the road, still begged my friend to fill me the fuck in. Who are you texting? What's going on? Where are we going to say something? Tom tore his eyes from the phone and finally turned to face me. How do you think we have any money? And I stared blankly. I never really considered that. Fact. Studies always had donors. Could be anybody. Individuals, institutions, companies, or organizations. As long as they all followed the letter of the law, which we did not. My colleague flicked my forehead like an asshole, and I swatted his hand away and tried to focus on the road. Who do you think paid for all the computers in the back seat or the lab we sit in every day? How about the extremely expensive video equipment we used to monitor 5 individuals the weeks they were murdered? The 5 Priyanka as Tom guffawed at my apparent stupidity. Take the next exit. I did as told. The dripping water through the window made me shiver involuntarily. I did it myself this time. He mumbled better that way, for a dissident. Nothing like a little arsenic and her girlfriend's pepper chicken. What the fuck are you talking about? I asked. You have to talk to me. Man, I'm the one driving. Tom took a long look at me before he finally sighed and replied, There's a man behind the curtain. Justin, there always is. We need to get away from him. A massive oak tree fell from the side of the road. It landed about 20 feet ahead. That should have given me enough time to stop. The brakes in my car screeched unevenly. I did my best to swerve, and so we didn't crash immediately. Tom had time to offer one final line in the chaos before wooden splinters ripped apart the paneling of my mid-sized SUV. There's always a man behind the curtain. The next few moments, in my memory, is a mixture of broken glass and hurling objects. I can remember the tumbles pretty clearly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Suspensions of gravity in total. Seat belts. Kept both of us stationed securely to the vehicle. But the same cannot be said for the piles of electrical equipment. The good news was that the last turnover put the car right side up. Bad news was that it was in the middle of a New Jersey swamp, and Tom was losing a lot of blood. He faded in and out of consciousness. My arm felt broken nonetheless. Adrenaline allowed me to pull my colleague from the car and lay him down on the hill. My middle-class pipe dream sunk into 2 feet of mud. All of our equipment, we were stuck. The accumulating rain made it impossible to drag ourselves up. I tried to stop Tom's bleeding with my shirt. That was about as successful as trying to stop a spout with a pin. The worst wound the old man sustained struck his wrinkled old head. Red bits of skin and flesh poked through my white shirt. I don't think he had much time left. I do think the integrity of that moment made him reconsider a few things in life. He would have tortured her. The words again made me feel cold inside. Why? Who is he? Why does he care? I don't understand, Tom. Why would you kill one of our subjects? It was just like going to sleep. A pair of headlights arrived by the side of the road soon after. I could barely see the figure that gracefully slid down the embankment. He wore an impeccable black suit, fit his thin and agile form flawlessly. I waved and called out, There's a man dying here. But he did not reply. The rain started to erode the embankment we were lying upon the shadow, and the suit watched me struggle to hold up Tom's body with a broken arm and a couple of cracked ribs. He snorted audibly and said, Good evening to you both, in an awkwardly confident tone. I tried to reply back. Help had arrived. I thought we were saved, but before I could, Tommy once called God, shot him 2 times in the stomach. Then there was only one subject remaining in the study, me. I wished I wasn't alive. That's such a bullshit statement these days. What do the kids call it, basic? The very same line could be applied to waiting in the doctor's office with a common cold, or sneezing in someone's face, or using the restroom in a public place. Just doesn't mean anything anymore. You know, exaggeration and veneer have taken the guts out of every word meant to imply the severity of my situation truthfully. Now let's try that again. I wished I was not alive. You thought the devil capable of immense torture, then God, it will almost certainly offer you a pleasant surprise. He brought me somewhere inside the drugs that coursed through my vein in an IV were unlike anything I had ever experimented with in college. Pain became something to rest my hat on when breathing was no longer a required chore. The shapes inside my teeming space blended together like three white rabbits shuffling through a surgery room. I felt insanity. He gripped the corners of my brain and held it tight like a vice. I prayed to death through gritted teeth and begged him to visit that night. He didn't. Tommy knew about this fate. His last words told me everything I needed to know. There was always a man behind the curtain. I would like to talk about the God experiment. Through all the chaos of pain and pounding vibrations in my body, I could hear the voice as clear as could be. It boomed and resonated through the hollow room as if an echo. I spoke back as a humble servant prepared to meet my maker. Subject 005. Is a little lady named Priyanka. She is a 25-year-old bisexual female. A white rod of lightning intercepted my mind again. Subject 005 was killed by Subject 6 Tommy. The pain grew worse. God did not like my answer. I asked him why. His response was a draw of a deep breath and a let out an overwhelming sigh. Kid's too loopy. This is not working. We will have to try again later. I looked around the room and tried to take in my surroundings. The walls were stained with waves of brown water damage and growing mold. The floor felt concrete. My bare feet were tied up to the legs with a rickety wooden chair. I shook nervously. Fuck, God screamed in annoyance. This is not the plan. This is not the fucking plan. Female voice called out from somewhere in the background. Life never fits the plan, Diego, but you were the handler on this one. You're fuck up. The third deep tone murmured its support. Diego's reply seemed angry. I did not know why his memory is supposed to wipe. The feds tested it years ago. We have used these same drugs on Subject 6 for 6 years. Is it too soon? The female's voice sounded downright cocky when she replied, It's not too soon. Just doesn't always work the way you want. Their voices converged in a cacophony of whispers too difficult to understand. Somewhere underneath all the horrible things churning inside of me, clarity approached. You're not God. I offered the words to the room in a dazed booming. Oh, now he gets it. The male voice laughed again. Then he punched me in the mouth. Haven't you heard the state is God? The G-man looked at the bruise on his fist while I spit a pool of blood in his direction. It all added up in that moment. The subjects were dissidents. They were destined to die because our government wanted them to die. Our purpose in the God experiment was only to ensure death came at the right time. We have to kill him. The Attorney General, the lady cut off her partner. Reason behind multiple genders and orientations seemed pretty simple. They both paused. Our handlers wanted to prove a point that I took the momentum of the moment to throw my chair to the floor. Everyone is vulnerable at any time. The struggle that ensued did not favor anyone can be taken care of. I broke the legs and managed to scurry free. The subjects we watched were targeted for execution by the same arms around my arms that collected the other two punched me, and so on. There is no more apt description for our commanders-in-chief. I outright laughed at his sheer stupidity. If you ask the fat man was covered in blood. I'm afraid they are in short head and lab coat like for the past 6 months. I have been forced to hide. However, I do not know why feds allow me to be alive. Nothing short of I can feel their eyes every time I go to bed. I would not be alive. Just before I submitted this final update, the camera on my laptop flickered red. 2 bullets caught my attackers. They're watching you too. The third let go. I only wanted someone else to shot him in the ankle. I stumbled out of the room and escaped the scene of the crime just in time. Tom caught one more bullet himself that night. He died alongside the same men that ruined his life. The government selected 7 subjects from radically different backgrounds. Their names were Mike, Caroline, Courtney, Michelle, Priyanka, Tommy, and me.